All right, so, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep today. And, well, you sent us some pretty wild stuff this time. Really got us thinking.
Yeah, no kidding. It's all about, like, these situations where people who aren't citizens, they said some stuff and now they might get kicked out. Crazy, right?
It's got us asking some seriously big questions about how far free speech goes, especially in democracies.
Yeah, democracy, right? It's kind of their whole thing, right? Freedom of speech. But, like, what happens when what you're saying is, like, let's overthrow the government or something, Messy situation.
Total minefield. And it's happening more and more, seems like. Government's getting a little twitchy, especially when it's foreigners saying the controversial stuff.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, where's the line? How much can you actually say, especially if you're not a full-fledged citizen? Just visiting or being there with a green card, whatever. Big question. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. 2 cases, 2 different countries, same kind of problem. We're talking Taiwan booting out a mainland Chinese lady who was all about forceful unification, and the U.S. potentially doing the same to a guy with a green card who's been pretty vocal about supporting, get this, Hamas.
Talk about picking a side, huh? But yeah, let's break it down. Nice and simple. No legal mumbo-jumbo. You know us. Give the people what they want. The juicy facts and some wait what moments.
So, first things first. Taiwan. We got to lay out the scene. This woman, it's all over the news there. She's married to a Taiwanese guy living there. But here's the kicker. She wasn't just saying, oh, one day, wouldn't it be nice if kind of thing. She was on doing, the Chinese TikTok. Straight up saying Taiwan should be taken by force.
Aggressive much. Yikes.
Right. But here's where it gets tricky. Taiwan actually has a party. They call it the Unification Promotion Party, and guess what? They also want to unify with mainland China. But
wow.
Big but. They're generally about peaceful methods.
Okay, so there's a difference, right? Like wanting the same thing, but how you go about it matters.
Huge difference. Like in Taiwan, it's more about how you say it, even if the goal is the same. Subtle, huh?
So saying unification, yay, is not the problem.
Not necessarily. But even that party, the peaceful one, they're in hot water too. They might get shut down because guess what? Suspected money ties to mainland China.
Money talks, huh?
Yeah.
So it's not just what you say, but who's backing you up, maybe.
Exactly. Gets complicated fast. But back to our lady, the one who got kicked out. It was the forceful unification bit that did it. Like advocating for an invasion, boom, residency permit gone, 10 days to pack her bags.
Ouch. Message received loud and clear. So clearly Taiwan's like, we're a democracy, we have our own thing going on, and no one's going to waltz in here with an army.
100%. They see it as a direct attack on their whole system, their security, everything. Now, let's hop across the globe to the US of A. Different country, different story, kind of same vibes. We've got Mon Khalil, this Palestinian guy, got his green card, studying at Columbia University. Smarty pants.
Ivy League. Fancy. But not so fancy when you get mixed up with the wrong crowd.
Yeah, this guy was part of a group. Pretty radical, let's be real. Their whole platform was all about violence, getting rid of democracies, the whole 9 yards. Even said stuff like killing a Zionist, meaning an Israeli, by the way, is no biggie. Chilling stuff.
Whoa, hold up. That's taking it way too far.
So kidding.
Yeah.
And this group, they were all about any means necessary, including, you guessed it, armed resistance. So the U.S. government, especially under Trump, that's what one source said, they started the whole deportation process. They're not saying he directly messed with, like, citizens' free speech, but his whole Hamas thing and the violent talk, that's a no-go for them. Supporting a terrorist organization? Not cool, man.
Right. There are lines you don't cross. Like, I could rant about the price of coffee all day long. That's my right. But suggesting we bomb a Starbucks because their lattes are too weak, yeah, it's going to get me a visit from some very serious people.
Perfect analogy. And look, the U.S. has this whole law, the INA, Immigration and Nationality Act, super long, lots of rules, supporting terrorism. Yeah, that's in there under reasons we can deport you, national security and all that.
Makes sense. Keep the country safe, right?
Yeah.
But where are we at with this guy? They actually kicked him out.
Not yet. It's in the courts now. Lots of legal back and forth. Could go either way. But it's a perfect example of how sticky this whole free speech thing can get.
It's like, okay, we get free speech, but where does it actually stop? Like, can you really yell fire in a crowded theater?
The classic example. And the answer is almost always no. You can't just say whatever pops into your head without consequences, especially if it puts people in danger.
Right. Like, I'm all for free speech, but if you're going to incite a panic or get people hurt, that's crossing a line.
Totally. So in most democracies, free speech is kind of like, say what you want, but, and that but is important. There are limits. You can't incite violence, for example. That's a big one, almost everywhere. And it makes sense, right? We don't want people getting hurt because someone's running their mouth.
Yeah, no one wants a riot because some dude decided to be a jerk on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So in the U.S., you can't just go around saying, let's blow stuff up or whatever.
Nope. Not without expecting a knock on the door from the FBI, probably. And Taiwan, similar deal. They value free speech, but they're also super focused on national security, especially with China always looming, you know?
Right. They're in a tough spot geographically.
Yeah.
So back to our two cases. One lady wants a military takeover. The other guy's supporting a group known for violence. How does that square with the whole freedom of speech thing?
Tricky, right? It's where things get super nuanced. And one big factor is, are you a citizen or not?
Uh-huh. Like, if you're just visiting Disneyland, you don't get the same rights as, like, Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much. Foreigners often do have some free speech rights, in democracies at least. But they're almost always more limited than for citizens. It's kind of like, you're a guest, be respectful. And even within that, it's not just a yes or no. Like in the US, having a green card gets you more free speech leeway than a tourist visa, but less than a naturalized citizen. Layers upon layers.
So it's not just about what you say, but who you are, where you're from, what your status is in the country. Complicated.
Totally. And each country has its own rules, too. But generally, if you're a foreigner and your speech is seen as a threat, a real threat to the country, well, you might not be welcome there anymore.
So in Taiwan, advocating for a Chinese invasion, yeah, that's not going to fly. They see it as a direct threat to their existence.
Exactly. And for the U.S., supporting Hamas, which is literally designated as a terrorist organization, that's a big no-no, especially for a green card holder. Goes against their core values, national security, the whole deal.
It's like you're a guest in someone's house. You got to play by their rules, right? And if you start threatening to burn the place down, well, you're probably getting kicked out.
Perfect analogy. Nations get to decide who stays, and part of that is making sure people aren't a danger to their values, their people, their whole system.
Speaking of systems, let's back up a sec. We've been throwing around free speech like it's a football, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
Like, define it for us simple folk.
All right, so free speech, in a nutshell, is the right to speak your mind, share your ideas, whatever, without the government or anyone else, like shutting you down or punishing you unfairly. It's a cornerstone of any democracy.
Right. Like, I can disagree with you, you can disagree with me, and we can have a nice debate over coffee without the cops showing up. That's the beauty of it.
Exactly. And it's more than just talking. It's about holding power accountable, protecting people's dignity, being able to speak truth to power without fear. It's a huge deal.
So it's not just about ranting on Twitter about bad pizza toppings. It's about having a voice, a real voice in society.
Bingo. But like we've been saying, it's never absolute. There are always limits. Like, remember that yelling fire in a theater thing? That's a classic example.
Right. You can't just create chaos for the sake of it. And I bet there are other limits too, right?
You bet. Most countries have laws against inciting violence. That's universal, pretty much. Can't go around saying, let's go beat up that guy and expect to be protected. Then you've got things like defamation, making threats, spreading lies that cause harm. It's about balancing individual rights with the safety and well-being of everyone else.
Right. Your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins, as they say. Makes sense. And hey, it's not just governments who can limit speech, right? What about companies like Facebook? They can kick people off their platform for saying the wrong stuff, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of the sources, it was from Cornell Law School, they talked about how private companies have a lot of leeway in what they allow on their platforms. They're not bound by the same rules as the government.
So Zuckerberg gets to play king of his own little online world, huh? Interesting. Well, let's go back to the harm thing for a sec. Like, why can't I just say whatever I want, even if it hurts someone's feelings?
Because words have power, man. Think about it. Words can incite violence, spread hate, ruin reputations. There's a whole philosophy behind this called the harm principle. Basically, your freedom stops where someone else's harm begins.
Deep stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being nice. It's about recognizing that speech can be a weapon, too.
Exactly. It's about responsibility. Like, I have the right to criticize the government. That's key to a democracy. But I can't use that right to spread lies that put people in danger. There's got to be a balance.
So in our two cases, the Taiwan lady advocating for invasion, that's seen as harming Taiwan's sovereignty, their people's right to choose their own future. And the U.S. guy supporting Hamas, a group known for violence. That's potentially putting people at risk, too.
Exactly. It's not just about abstract ideas. It's about real-world consequences. Speech can have a ripple effect, you know?
It's like throwing a rock into a pond. Those ripples can reach pretty far. So it's not just about what you say, but the potential impact of those words. Deep.
Right. And this whole thing, it feels like it's getting more and more common. One of the sources talked about this trend of democracies clamping down on foreigners who say stuff they don't like.
Yeah, feels like everyone's a little more on edge these days, you know? Maybe it's social media, the news, all the craziness in the world.
Probably all of the above.
Yeah.
In the U.S., they're definitely getting stricter. Think about it. They're checking people's social media now before they let them in. Citizenship, green cards, even asylum seekers. They're digging deep.
Wow, Big Brother's watching, huh? So, like, if I post a dumb meme about loving pineapple on pizza, could that keep me out of the country?
Probably not, but you never know. It's a good reminder to be mindful of what you put out there, especially if you're planning on traveling or living abroad. And it's not just about what you post, but whether you're honest about it. Lying about your social media, that's a quick way to get yourself in trouble.
So, lesson learned.
Yeah.
Be careful what you post online, kids. It might come back to bite you, especially if you're dealing with immigration stuff.
Word. And then there's this other crazy idea that came up in the sources. It's called reciprocity. Like, if China doesn't let people talk freely about Taiwanese independence, should those same people have unfettered free speech in the U.S., a country that does value that freedom?
Trippy, right?
It's almost like, hey, play by our rules or we'll play by yours. Kind of makes sense, but it's definitely a slippery slope.
No kidding. It's like, how do you balance fairness with protecting your own values?
Yeah.
Tough call. And it's not just the U.S. and Taiwan, you know? Different countries, different rules.
Right. What flies in one place might get you arrested in another.
Totally. Like,
Yeah.
we saw that in the sources. Australia, Japan, the UK, they all have their own take on this. Singapore, super strict.
Yeah.
You can get in trouble there for saying stuff that's considered offensive to any religion or race.
Whoa, really? So no edgy jokes in Singapore, huh? Not if you want to stay out of jail. And countries that are like in a war or super tense situation, they're even more careful about what people say. Russia, Ukraine, obviously. Taiwan, with China always being a threat, you know? They got to be on their toes.
It's like the more danger a country feels, the tighter they grip that free speech leash.
Makes sense, right? They're trying to protect themselves. But it does make you wonder about the future of free speech globally. Is it shrinking? Expanding? Who gets to decide?
Big questions, man. Big questions. But let's wrap this up with the takeaway, the big aha moment for our listeners. What have we learned today?
Well, the big lesson is free speech is complicated, man, especially for people who aren't citizens. It's all about balance, finding that sweet spot between letting people speak their minds and protecting a country, its people, its values. And where that line is, well, that's the million-dollar question.
Yep. It's like walking a tightrope, huh? One wrong step and the whole thing collapses. And these two cases, the lady in Taiwan and the guy in the U.S., they're perfect examples of how messy it can get. It's a reminder that words have power, real power, and governments are paying attention. More and more these days, it seems.
They are, and it makes you wonder, where is this all heading? What does it mean for the future of free speech, not just in individual countries, but for the whole world?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
So to our listeners out there, what do you think? Where should the line be? How much free speech is too much, especially for foreigners? And what does it mean for all of us as we move forward in this crazy interconnected world? Think about it, it's a big one.